Okay, we wrapped up our section on the Native Americans, and in your textbook, that is only Chapter 1, Section 1. So we are still on Chapter 1. Chapter 1 covers a lot of history prior to Columbus and the other explorers coming to the New World. But we do need to understand how Europeans decided to start to head west and discover these new lands of North and South America, with the exception of the Vikings hundreds of years prior, but they kept it a secret for the most part. But we'll talk about how Europeans decided to come. But we need to kind of look back into European history a couple hundred years prior to Columbus heading west and examine what was going on in Europe. You're going through a time called the Middle Ages or called the Dark Ages, and you have this conflict between Christians and the Muslims of the Middle East. Okay, so the Crusades were fought between European Christians and Middle Eastern Muslims. So after the fall of the Roman Empire in Europe, Europe kind of goes through this digression, you'd say, in society where not a lot of scientific advances, really, life expectancy is really low. They really lost a lot of what they had gained through the Roman Empire, and now focusing on superstition. Their entire lot, you're going to see a video on how their life is completely surrounded by religion and kind of that fear. Whereas in the Middle East, you have this fairly new religion that has been on the scene called Islam. Its founder was Muhammad, and Islam had spread very quickly. And the Middle East and Islam, these Islamic empires, were very advanced, and they were definitely not going through dark ages. They were finding scientific advances and performing surgeries and studying mathematics. And the Middle East was flourishing, whereas Europe was had kind of stopped in progression until really the Crusades kind of opened up things for Europe. So here's Europe here. Keeps popping up. Okay, when did this take place? Well, roughly 200 years from 1100 AD to 1300 AD. You have these series of crusades throughout Europe. So the area that is being fought over is this right here. You would call it the Holy Land, or today was modern-day Israel. This throughout history has been a very sought-after land. Even till today, there's conflict going on. I'm sure you've seen in the news in Israel. And this city here, Jerusalem, is an epicenter for three major religions: Judaism, or the Jewish people; Christianity, okay, followers of Christ; and then Islam, or the followers of Muhammad. Okay, why? Christians wanted to capture the Holy Land, which is modern-day Israel, from the Muslims. Muslims had control over this area, and their influence had been spreading throughout North Africa, the Middle East, and into Europe. And Europe had, in southern Europe here, which was the Roman Empire, you had was now the Byzantine Empire. All right, so the leader of the Catholic Church at the time, his name was Pope Urban II. He called for what was called the First Crusade, or to recapture the Holy Land for Christianity in 1095. And we'll see what are the roots of this First Crusade and what made him decide to go in and start this conflict between the Muslims and trying to take back Israel.
There was good reason why men would risk everything to journey to a distant land from which they might never return. Blighted by famine and racked by petty wars, their European homeland was a cursed place. They craved a better life in this world and the next. In November 1095, the Pope performed a spellbinding open-air sermon outside the town of Clermont in France. It was a rallying call to princes, knights, clerics, and the common man to wage a war under the banner of the Catholic Church. Tens of thousands of men and women, families, even whole villages took vows to join Pope Urban's crusade. Pope Urban took an unprecedented step. He offered to those who pledged their souls to the crusade a ticket directly to heaven.
The world of the Middle Ages was a world that was deeply concerned with matters of religion. And it's almost impossible for us in a secular age today to overestimate how concerned they were. It's almost impossible for us to understand how concerned they were.
People are bombarded with the fact that they are threatened by sin from all forms of life. Just about everything they can do in life is potentially sinful. It's literally as if the air they're breathing is contaminated with sin. As far as I'm concerned, there's one key thing that's driving people to take up the cross. And that is that they actually believe that this crusade is a spiritual war and that it's going to purify their souls of sin. It's religion that's driving it.
The Pope's sermon pushed the boundaries of Christian teaching. In his holy war, a crusader now had the blessing of God to ignore the sixth commandment, thou shalt not kill, as long as he was an infidel.
Pope Urban marketed the crusade brilliantly. He struck a number of chords that the knights of Western Europe wanted to hear. He said, look, you're living these violent lives. If you don't atone for your sins, you're going to go to hell. What the crusade offered was a way of carrying on fighting and also receiving a spiritual reward.
This is violence which God actually wants, and he wants it so much that he's actually going to give a spiritual reward to people who participate. It's literally like opening Pandora's box. I'm not sure he's actually conscious of how dangerous an idea he's tampering with at the moment.
In the autumn of 1096, almost a year after the Pope's sermon, armies from France, Germany, and Italy set out on the epic 3,000-mile march to aid their Christian brothers and liberate the Holy Land from Muslim rule. At stake, a tiny strip of land just a few hundred miles long, but with the greatest prize: Jerusalem. This was the collision of two great faiths, the clash between the crescent and the cross.
This is what...
So after years of fighting in several crusades over back and forth, Holy Lands kind of go back into European hands for a little while, then the Muslims take control. The Crusaders, this combination of Christians from all over Europe, meet and slaughter non-Christians, including Jewish people and Muslims. Alright, the results of the Crusades. The Muslims retained control of the Holy Land. A lot of it because of this leader. His name is Saladin. Okay, Saladin was the Muslim military leader, and he was able to kick out the Christians back out of the Holy Land. And there were several crusades back and forth, but Saladin really solidifies that the Muslims would have control over Jerusalem and the Holy Land. Okay, so the Crusades, a lot of results of the Crusades. One negative result, of course, would be the relationship between Christians and Muslims, that animosity there. And you could still say that even could last even till today. There's some hard feelings between them hundreds of years later, between those two faiths. European demands for Asian products increase, though. When Crusaders go into the Middle East, they get a taste of what some of these luxuries or these commodities that may be found in Europe. And also ideas are spread back and forth. Not everybody was just actually killing each other. Sometimes things would be spread. Religion, ideas, and the Crusades, a positive of the Crusades, at least in the European perspective, would be these new commodities that are introduced to Europe. and also ideas that are going to maybe bolster or help economically Europe, and that's going to open up the Renaissance. You'll see how this plays out throughout history, and how Europe comes out of the Dark Ages, out of the Middle Ages, and flourishes once again. So the European demands for Asian products, such as silk. Here's a silkworm, which will be found in China. Okay, spices, glassware, china, rice, and oranges increase. And these different commodities, black pepper, ginger, will be found in India and Southeast Asia. Okay, as a result of the Crusades, European trade with Asia actually increases. Not just with goods, but also ideas as well. Okay, and as we take a look at that, you're going to see how these middlemen between Europe and between Asia, these little checkpoints throughout the Silk Road and places where all other commodities are being traded, become very, very wealthy. Cities in northern Italy and Europe is going to become very, very wealthy in the Middle East because of the trade and all these different checkpoints. So a few generations later, you have explorers like Columbus deciding, well, maybe we could skip the middleman. How do we go get our goods from Europe and from Asia back and forth without having to go through all these checkpoints and getting Europe rich and making goods cheaper? So the discovery of the New World is economic, really. Okay, we will see you next time for our next lecture.